on DAB and on the talkRADIO app. Talk Radio. Weekend Breakfast with Penny Smith on talkRADIO.
Colin Babb's 1973 and Me talks about really a life with cricket, and 1968 to 73. Craig, are you a cricket fan?
I must admit, not the slightest.
Not in the slightest. I know. I like the idea of it. I love the idea of the thwack of leather on willow and the cucumber sandwiches at
and the
half
atmosphere,
time or whatever you have. Yes. And the sort of the general lazy summer aspect of it. And I'm sure it's not even remotely like that. Although, having said that, in India, I did get rather addicted to the fast cricket that they have.
The 2020, is it? Is that the one?
That's the one. And the 2020. And they play it in really bright outfits. There's a lot of dancing. I mean, some of the players do somersaults and all that sort of very
this sounds more up my street. Yeah.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing. I think the thing is, as I said, I like the idea of it. I like the gentleness of it, but I know it's not gentle, and I know still I'm sure people who play it would say it's anything but gentle. But yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Anyway, from 68 to 73, the West Indies did not win a Test series and lost 2-0. 2-0? I think you probably still say that, or is it 2-0? Anyway, on the last England tour in 1969. So it was a big year for Colin Babb, who joins us now. And Colin, morning to you. Tell me why, or tell us why, 1973 looms so large in your life.
Well, it was an important year for me because basically I was just settling into my newish flat with my Guyanese mother, Guyanese great-grandmother and Barbadian father, all living together in a flat in South London with Jamaican neighbours downstairs and English-Irish neighbours across and Jewish neighbours to my right. So it was a fairly diverse street, you could say. I was settling into my new school, coming to terms with a fairly new neighbourhood, and also coming to terms with linking up with cricket and finding out more about that. And I think 73 was important because that was the tour that really got me into West Indies cricket. Because up to then, I was more of a football fan. I was obsessed with Leeds United and players like Clyde Best, who was one of the first black players to really make it, into the popular imagination of football fans in Britain. So yeah, it was kind of the year I transferred my affections from football to cricket, or let's say began to support cricket and football on an equal level. So yes,
why was that? Why in particular 73?
I think 73 was because it was the first time I saw the West Indies play on television. I know you spoke to Sir Tim Rice earlier and he could not remember that tour. Well, I certainly remember it because it was the year that I really felt connected with cricket and West Indies cricket. Because the West Indies arrived in 1973 after not winning a Test series for, some years, not since 1968. And on their last tour to England in 1969, they lost the series. So they came to England in 73 on a run of indifferent form, not winning Test series. And the Caribbean community, which was still growing and emerging in the 70s, were hopeful for some success on English soil. Because the West Indies team was very important to West Indians, I should say, who were here living in Britain in the 70s. Most of them had arrived in the 60s and the 50s after the Second World War. And cricket was really a link to their homeland, a link to something where we could see West Indians doing well in this country and beating the English, not just beating the English. I wanted the West Indies to beat everybody, not just the English.
All conquering.
No, because I grew up in England and I had lots of English friends, Irish friends from all over the place. So it wasn't really being anti-English. It was just a way of showing that as West Indians, we could be successful. We could work together and be strong and dominant and forceful, especially during a period when many West Indians in Britain were facing serious challenges, barriers, racial barriers, difficulties in getting jobs in certain areas, living in underfunded neighborhoods, having difficulties with some police forces. So when the West Indies came here and did well, it was a connection with pride. It made us feel good, and also during the research for this book, I found out that it was actually a meeting point. So, for example, I've heard stories where West Indians who had been living in England for a while would go and watch the West Indies play, I don't know, at the Oval in London or Old Trafford in Manchester, Headingley in Leeds, Trent Bridge in Nottingham, and bump into people they'd not seen for years back in Barbados or Trinidad or Guyana. So they'd meet old friends who they didn't even think had migrated to Britain just by meeting at a cricket match. It was kind of a social forum, a way of expressing a sense of Caribbean solidarity in an open space.
Well, this is what I was going to ask. Did it become almost as you bumped into somebody in the street that this was the equivalent to the old British of how about this weather we've been having? The immediate icebreaker was about cricket?
Yeah, you could say that because when people came here from the Caribbean in the 50s and 60s and 70s, people came here from different parts of the Caribbean. It wasn't just Jamaicans coming to London. It should not be framed as a simple line of migration from one island to one part of England. People came from St. Kitts to live in Leeds. People came from Barbados to live in Reading. People came from Dominica to live in East London and in Bradford. People came from Guyana to live in parts of London as well. So that migration experience was multi-layered and came from different parts of the region. Yeah. Therefore, you had situations where people from Jamaica may not have met anybody from Trinidad unless they were, in England, for example. It was a place where different parts of the Caribbean, people from different regions and islands and territories met each other for the first time. So even though West Indians had similar pressures and challenges as migrants living in Britain, it was a way of uniting people from different islands who didn't always see eye to eye with each other around a common cause, which was the West Indies cricket team. And also, it was a way of connecting the first and second generation West Indians together. So if you were born here or brought up here and your parents were from the Caribbean like me, there were similarities with your parents, but also there were differences. But one thing you could unite around was the fact that you always wanted the West Indies to win, whether or not you were a cricket fan or not, because obviously not everybody in the Caribbean.
Just very briefly. It's coming up to Christmas. You mentioned in the book garlic pork brought to Guyana by the Portuguese, and you said you don't remember Christmas morning without it. Is that going to be happening this Christmas?
Unfortunately, I can't visit my parents because of COVID. I'm staying well clear of them, which is unfortunate. So I'll be doing my own Guyanese garlic pork at home. Okay. Just to say that if anybody's interested in the book, they can contact me on colinbabbauthor.com and to find out more. Yeah, and it's a great read whether you're into cricket or not.
Thank you, and it is, and thank you very much, Colin. And we're going to take a quick break there. Colin Babb's 1973 and Me.
Online, on DAB.